What is up, guys, and welcome back to episode 10 of our Road to Glory series. And today we are going to build on something which I mentioned in our last video about, is it time to actually start going a bit more heavy into the MLS, doubling down and starting to actually strengthen my gallery in that area rather than strengthening on the upcoming European season. So I've picked out a couple players in the goalie, defender, midfielder, and forward position, and we're going to just talk through them, talk through their price and why I think they're very good value currently. And as always, guys, before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and let's get into the video. Okay, so we're going to start with the goalie position, and I think that Stefan Fry is definitely a example of someone that has a few negative points that obviously bring his price down. For instance, his age, he's 37. I did read an article recently about how he wants to extend his contract for one more year in Seattle, which is obviously great news. And whether Seattle are going to take that option, I don't know. But if he does stay for another year, his price at £280 currently is something which I think is very, very good. If you have a look at his price graph, yeah, his last sales are even under that at 267, 259, 264. And I mean, there's been a lot of people just starting to move out of the MLS and now starting to actually reinvest that money into the upcoming Euro leagues. And I can see why people are obviously doing that, but they've got games up until the 22nd of the 10th. So there's plenty of usage there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 games there. And at this sort of price, you know, with 16 thresholds, you can probably hit threshold like 10 times, which is, you know, £500 back. And if you manage to get some good scores, or even if you use this card in like a cap 270 or even an all-star, you know, Seattle are one of the best teams in the MLS. I think he might have the highest amount of clean sheets as well. And yeah, I think for his price, he's a really good value currently. I know obviously if you look at his scoring, he does struggle to get above 80. He's always in that sort of 60 to like mid 70 range. But yeah, if you look through his scores, Seattle keep a good amount of clean sheets. They're one of the better teams. So I think for his price, obviously you've got a few drawbacks there, but if you were just starting Sorare now, or if you were looking to actually really sort of double down on the MLS, then I think he's a really good option. And then next up, we have Brad Guzan, who is actually quite similar to Stefan Fry in the fact that he is a old keeper. He is on a worse team. Atlanta aren't as good as Seattle. I believe his price has been brought down a little bit by someone that mislisted. Yes, this was probably 212. That should have been maybe. But yeah, someone put that price up nice and cheap. One of the bots bought it. But he should be going around that sort of like 150 to 160 pound mark. And he's even cheaper than Fry, and to the point where if you get like 5, 6 good games out of him, it's probably worthwhile. He is one of those keepers that can hit a little bit higher, as you can see here. Obviously, he's had his injury problems, but if he stays fit, you're getting a keeper for 150-ish quid. That's going to play 16 games. And yeah, you can probably hit threshold 9, 10 times, which pays this card. Obviously, his contract is up at the end of the season, and he is 38, so there is that possibility of him stopping playing, hanging up his boots, and that'll be that. But if you can yield back what you paid for him, I think it's once again a really good option. And in defense, we're going to look at a player which I've been thinking about getting for my own gallery, and that is Franco Escobar, who plays for Houston Dynamo. He's a good age, and he's also under contract till next season. And Houston are one of those teams that really fit the whole, just they play so much better at home. And if you look at his scores, take out all the games where he isn't starting and put home, he averages 66.7 with 28.9 AA. And they are some crazy scores, which you shouldn't really be able to get for this sort of price. The 3-day average is, yeah, around that £30 mark, 0.02 ETH. And they do have a couple of decent home games coming up against Kansas and Minnesota. And I haven't checked, but I assume the scores away from home are not too bad. I mean, it is obviously much lower compared to his home games, but he does have a couple of spike games in there. But yeah, even if you are just picking him up for his home games, this is a card which you can use all the way through, like I was saying, to the 22nd of the 10th. And then obviously next season as well, as he's under contract. And yeah, for a player which gets these sort of scores for 30 quid, I don't think you can really go wrong. Then moving on, we've got a centre back from Cincinnati called Nick Hagland. He's just come back from injury, I believe. He had a 5-game stretch here where he was out injured, and came back with a decent score of 62. He's a similar sort of profile as Escobar, so he's a decent age, under contract till next year, and he also plays for Cincinnati, who are one of the better teams. I haven't actually looked at his home or away split, which we can check here. But when he starts, averages 47.8. At home, that goes up a little bit to 50.7. And away from home, 44. So he's one of those players that you do want to target those home fixtures. And as a whole, gets really solid scores. Plays for one of the better teams. When he's fit, he plays every game, so you don't really need to worry about him getting benched. And yeah, I just think he's a really solid option with that chance of hitting those peak scores in the 80s. And he doesn't really kill your lineup anyway. There's a few scores here that are obviously quite low, but I mean, what's that, like 4 scores, which probably kill you. The rest are okay, especially for like cap 220s, cap 240s, cap 270s. And yeah, I think for his price, once again, around that £30 mark, I think you could build up a good team of players that are playing for the better teams in the MLS. You know, these aren't people that are playing for like Inter Miami or whatever. Cincinnati are one of the better teams. So I think this is a really smart purchase as well. Then moving into the midfield, you probably heard me speak about this player before, but I really do think that Christian Espinoza is one of the most undervalued players right now in the MLS. If you just look at his scoring, all of these scores here are just brilliant. He's had a little bit of a dry patch here, but it's very rare that players keep up this sort of form for the whole season, and it's very rare you see this section of graph all the way across. Normally, that's for like the really, really top end players, and the fact that he's still getting, you know, 50, 60, 50 and 56 here with no assists, no goal, just purely on AA. I think that's a really good sign. And the Earthquakes have a few decent fixtures. At home against the Galaxy, away to Portland. They've got Tigres, Whitecaps, Kansas, Galaxy again, Minnesota, DC, Salt Lake, Portland. That's a decent run of games. A couple of tricky ones with LA and Sounders in there, but yeah, if he can get to this sort of form again, his price is going to absolutely skyrocket, I think. Obviously, you have to factor in that the season's ending, so maybe using skyrocket is the wrong term, but I think that his price now is like an all-time low, at like £94. If you compare like back here, he's going for like 320, 285. The only thing that's really changing is that he's, yeah, just running out of games. But even then, he's got 16 games, like I've mentioned. You can use them all the way through till then, and then hopefully by that point, the players in the Euro leagues, they're going to be a little bit cheaper as the season would have started. You would have lost, you know, 2-3 months ish worth of games. So yeah, hopefully you could use these players all the way through, wait for those prices to come down, and then purchase players for the last few months of the season, and you can then use Espinoza again next season. You could then pair Espinoza with Mark Delgado from LA. There's quite a common theme of players that have contracts till next season, like he does. Once again, a good age, late 20s. He isn't going to hang up his boots anytime soon. He's got a run of home games coming up here, which is always good to see. And, you know, these scores aren't crazy, but he's really consistent around that 50 to 60 range. And when he does then get a goal or assist, you can see that he can then hit those high 80s and 90s, which is always really good to see. And yeah, his price currently is around the £50 mark, 0.03 ETH. If you look at his price graph as well, you'll just see a common trend here where he's basically down at, you know, as sort of low as he's been previously. There's been a like high peak here, it comes down again, then back up and then back down, which you would expect to see on a lot of these graphs. And yeah, I think you're buying a lot of these players at the lowest they'll be. And yeah, I think that way there's a lot less risk. And you can use these all the way through into the Euro seasons. For instance, my gallery, I think I've got about 15 rares in different leagues like Austria, Bundesliga, etc. So it isn't like I've got 0 cards for the upcoming leagues. Um, and yeah, I just think he's a really great option for his price. I don't think you'll be able to get this sort of player for this price in any of the leagues which are upcoming. And yeah, I think he's a really good option. And then up front, we've gone for Enzo Capetti, who plays for Charlotte. He's got a contract till 2025. So if he stays, you'll be able to use him for the next few years, which is good. His price currently is around that £100 mark. The forwards are always a little bit more in the MLS, and there's not really a lot of good options for cheaper that have that sort of long contract and also guaranteed minutes. He is someone that in his time in Argentina was getting really good scores here. Had a little injury at the start of his Charlotte career, which obviously impacts things when a player's moving into a new league, learning the language, getting settled in, that sort of stuff. Obviously, that's not ideal. He then came back after his injury with a assist and then nothing against Montreal. But I do think if he could get back to these sort of scores and become the main man for Charlotte, I think this sort of price is very, very good. And then you could also pair him with Brandon Vasquez, who is similar to Hagelin in that he plays for Cincinnati, one of the better teams. He's just age out of under 23 and he's got a contract till 2025. He also plays for the States in international as well. You can see here, not the best sort of minutes, but yeah, even if you can get a little bit of use during the international games, that always helps. And yeah, he's just one of those players that is really solid. Gets in that sort of 60 to like mid 70 range. Did have a 100 here, which is a little bit rare for him. He's normally this sort of green. But yeah, plays one of the best team, good contract, good age, and he's a little bit more expensive at £175. But I think for this level of player and for this contract situation and age, I think that's very, very good. And yeah, you could then stack him with Haglund and maybe another Cincinnati player and get a little sort of mini stack going there. And then just to show you how much these players would cost, so I've put them all into a concept here. Obviously, the keeper is a large portion of that, and also Brandon Vasquez as well. You could maybe find some cheaper options, but in total, that's £661 on the floor and 678 as a recent average. And you may be able to get these players a little bit cheaper with a little bit of bartering. I've put this team into All-Star just as a little check on their scores, and they can hit decent scores. You know, here a tier 3, and with everyone doing very, very well. Obviously, you can mix and match these teams based on matchups, or even include a few other players to actually stack. Like, for instance, take out Escobar here and put in Roldan, maybe get Eber Bise and take out Brandon Vasquez. But yeah, this was just to show how much this team costs and what sort of scores they're actually capable of hitting. And if you've been part of my streams the last few days, this is something which I've been umming and ahhing about, thinking about what's the best option for me moving forwards. Should I go and buy some more MLS players, try and win as many rewards and ETH as I can, building up to November, and then after that, spending that ETH on then improving my gallery for the Euros, but not the Euros, the European leagues, and then obviously by November the price of those players should have come down slightly from where they are now. Over the last 2 weeks, a lot of those players have increased in price, and I always like to be slightly different. So when everyone's trying to move out of this region, I think maybe there's an opportunity for me to actually strengthen here, become a little bit stronger than everyone else, and then hopefully do better, win some better cards, and then hopefully move my gallery forwards that way. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about this strategy. What are your strategies moving into the European leagues? And guys, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you've got any questions about anything that I've mentioned, please just let me know in the comments.